Welcome to our final session for FreightWeekSTL 2026. Thank you to all our sponsors for their incredible support of this annual event. We're closing out FreightWeekSTL 2026 with a panel discussion celebrating the 10th anniversary of the official launch of the St. Louis Regional Freightway. Joining me today are some of the key stakeholders who have been engaged with the Freightway since its earliest days, and together we're going to do a top 10 countdown of the biggest milestones from the Freightway's first decade. Those of you joining us today will learn how a commitment to collaboration has turned ideas into measurable momentum for the bi-state region. Please welcome Dennis Wilmsmeyer and Steve Zuber. Thank you for being here, and let's kick off with self-introductions. For those of you tuning in who don't know me, I'm Mary Lamie, Executive Vice President of Multimodal Enterprises with Bi-State Development, representing the St. Louis Regional Freightway. The Freightway coordinates infrastructure priorities with public and private sector leaders who represent freight-related interests of the St. Louis region's business community. And we also market the region's global logistics hub to site selectors, shippers, and carriers, and we partner with other regions throughout the U.S., finding ways to leverage national and global supply chains. Dennis, your turn.
Hello, my name's Dennis Wilmsmeyer. I'm Executive Director of America's Central Port. We're located in the St. Louis metropolitan region on the Illinois side of the river. We operate a 1,200-acre barge and rail transportation facility, 2 river harbors, about 29 miles of rail track, and about 2 million square feet of warehouse space, 70,000 square feet of office space, and even an apartment complex. Our involvement with the St. Louis Regional Freightway really has been since its inception. We were kind of founding members, if you will, 10 years ago when the Freightway got started. We helped recognize or saw, with others, saw a need for marketing the St. Louis region with all the assets that we have here in order to let the rest of the world know what we have going on.
Thanks, Dennis. Steve, you're next.
Thanks, Mary. Appreciate the invite. First of all, I'm Steve Zuber, president at BARBERMURPHY. We're an independent commercial real estate brokerage firm covering Illinois and Missouri. I hold the SIOR and CCIM designations, and I specialize in industrial land and investment properties. Our firm has 23 brokers, and we cover every asset class across the bi-state footprint. And my relationship with the Freightway goes back years as a broker working both sides of the river every day. I've been a beneficiary of the Freightway's work, and more recently, I had the privilege of serving as acting marketing chairman for the Freightway Marketing Committee. And from the broker's seat, I can tell you the Freightway has changed how our region competes for industrial investment. And I'm just glad to be here to celebrate 10 years of that impact. So, Mary, one of the key areas of focus for the Freightway Development Committee is development of the Freightway's priority projects list. Establishing that list is number 10 in our top 10 countdown. So tell us about the list and why it's so important for the St. Louis region.
Yeah, so Steve, our Freight Development Committee, they set regional multimodal transportation priorities to coordinate freight infrastructure. And the committee meets a couple times throughout the year. We update the list each year. And the committee includes representatives from each of the modes of transportation, manufacturing, logistics, economic development professionals. And then the secret to our success is the fact that we've got representation from both the Illinois and the Missouri Departments of Transportation. And so it's a platform for supply chain leaders to identify and advance projects based on their ability to reduce freight transportation costs, improve intermodal connectivity, and improve the freight efficiency and reliability. So this year's priority project list includes 29 projects representing a total investment of almost $9 billion. And some of our key projects includes the Merchants Rail Bridge over the Mississippi River. This is a project that was completed in 2022, and the total cost on that was about $222 million. We also have over $1 billion of improvements along Interstate 270, and that work takes place on both the Illinois and the Missouri River over the Mississippi River. And this series of projects is supporting some of the region's fastest growing industrial real estate corridors. We have more than $600 million under construction along Interstate 70 on the Missouri side. It's being led by the Missouri Department of Transportation, and this is MoDOT's largest single construction project in their history. And it's also part of a statewide $1.2 billion program of improving 3 sections of Interstate 70. We also have $400 million for a series of improvements along Illinois Route 3 in southwestern Illinois. And so these projects are not only going to benefit the trucking industry, but it's also going to enhance that multimodal connectivity for barge and rail operations along the Mississippi River. So the Freight Development Committee, it's recognized nationally as a model for public-private collaboration across the bi-state 8-county region. It really is a model that's helping our elected leaders, our DOTs, and decision makers better understand how investments in infrastructure directly impact supply chain efficiency, on-time delivery, and overall cost.
Fantastic, Mary. And with that project priority list, from its inception, the very highest priority was the Merchants Rail Bridge and delivering a renovated bridge that can bring us into the 21st century. So can you tell us a little bit about that as number 9 on our countdown list?
Yeah, so I already mentioned a $220 million river bridge project carrying our 6 Class 1 railroads and Amtrak. It is a primary east and west freight rail corridor that's crossing the Mississippi River. The bridge is owned by the Terminal Railroad Association of St. Louis. They are the owner. They are our local switching terminal railroad. And the project basically doubled our rail capacity by allowing 2 trains to cross the bridge simultaneously, which is obviously improving our capacity. And then the improvements of the project also included the approaches that are allowing the trains to travel at a higher speed. This project is considered one of our highest priority projects. We asked the barge industry, what's your number 1 infrastructure project? And that's where the barge industry had indicated this was their highest priority project. And I think this is a really good reflection of that strong interdependence between rail and barge transportation, where rail rates can significantly influence barge pricing and the overall freight cost. So it's a great example of where the region identified a project. It was on our list for several years. And during that time period, we raised awareness and engagement with our regional, state, and federal leaders. And when a funding opportunity became available with the federal government, all the engagement was in place. They applied for the grant, and we were able to receive additional funding for the project.
Fantastic. And the Merchants Rail Bridge is just one of numerous bridges that handle freight that connect Missouri to Illinois across this stretch of the Mississippi River, which is now known as the agricultural or the Ag Coast of America. As the number 8 countdown on our list, tell us a little bit about the Ag Coast of America.
Yeah, so we launched that branding, I think, in year 2 or 3 of the Freightway. And that's really a time period where I had gained a much better understanding of the region's geographic advantage, central location in the U.S., strategic position along the Mississippi River, ice-free and lock-free to and from the Gulf of America, and its multimodal connectivity across rail, barge, and truck. So at that point, I went to the barge industry, and I'm like, okay, I know we've got a lot of really good things going on. We've got this dense cluster of barge activities along with the geographic advantage and the infrastructure. What else is there to this story? And the barge industry indicated that the St. Louis region handles the highest amount of agricultural products and fertilizer along the inland waterway system. So it's the most anywhere. And this activity is really concentrated within a 15-mile stretch of the Mississippi River right in front of the Gateway Arch. And it's supported by 16 barge transfer facilities that have direct rail and truck access. And Dennis, if you recall, once I had that information, I went back to the marketing committee. And at that time, you were chairing the marketing committee. And the marketing committee decided that we were going to brand the region as the agricultural or Ag Coast of America. Within a 500-mile radius of the St. Louis region, 50% of U.S. crops and livestock are produced, and that includes 80% of the nation's corn and soybean acreage. So while we're not a traditional ocean coastline, the St. Louis region functions as an agricultural coastline, and we connect Midwestern production to the global markets. So the ingredients to this success that we have really focuses on the fact that we've got a dense concentration of grain and fertilizer handling capacity. We have multimodal flexibility, an ongoing infrastructure investment, at a central location within the nation's agricultural supply chain.
Mary, let's shift gears a little now to focus on number 7 on our countdown list, something that's near and dear to my heart. Debuting the featured real estate sites on the Freightway's website.
Yeah, so Steve, as you know, one of the primary objectives of the Freightway is to attract and support manufacturing and logistics industries. And so, in that space, one of the objectives we took on was how could we streamline the site selection process? So, we decided that we wanted to identify developer ready industrial real estate sites across our bi state region. And so, we've identified those locations, and you can actually find them on the freightway.com website. There's a fact sheet for each one of these locations, and it's actually one of the locations on our website that has the most views. So the sites are selected based on criteria, which includes a minimum of 20 acres. The site has to have appropriate zoning. It has to have representation by a broker, a developer, or a government entity. And it also has to have access to infrastructure. And for the St. Louis region, it has to have accessibility to either of our 6 Class 1 railroads, our 2 international airports, our ports, or our 4 interstates. So fast forward to today, we have more than 50 sites on our website. And then 2 or 3 years ago, based on the number of calls that we were receiving about sites with rail accessibility, we actually put a second list together that complements that first one. It includes 26 rail served sites across 20 locations. So this is really helping us streamline that process. So a broker or site selector who's interested in the Midwest, they've got easy access to that information. But I also think it's really important to focus on the relationships that we have with all the modes of transportation that are allowing us to assemble this information. And obviously, Steve, with you and your industry, that close collaboration with the industrial development community, this is really helping us having a central location that you can access this information that's helping us attract businesses to those targeted locations. And then looking ahead, the Freightway, we're going to continue to add new projects to that list. And a lot of times those sites aren't necessarily developer ready. And that's where we're working with you and other partners to focus on land assemblage and also helping meet some of those other criteria that was mentioned. So Steve, can you talk about how it's a resource for industrial real estate brokers?
Absolutely. First, the value for the realtors. This section of the website has become the go-to resource for brokers working industrial deals across the bi-state region. You've got one map, both states, consistent criteria, and that's what the site selectors need to make decisions quickly. And it's a resource I use all the time. Second, the advantages of having a site listed. So when a property makes the featured sites list, it's been vetted against real criteria, like you said, 20 plus acres, actively marketed, modern bulk buildings, entitlements, and utilities in place with real transportation access. That stamp of discipline elevates the listing in the eyes of a site selector. And the listings are provided free of charge to property owners, brokers, and developers. And the platforms puts our sites in front of decision makers around the globe. That kind of exposure is hard to buy. And third, the collaboration between the Freightway and the industrial real estate industry is the real engine. The Freightway isn't a competing broker, and it isn't one county selling against the next. It's a neutral platform that brings brokers, developers, property owners, and economic development partners to the same table. So we all share market intelligence. We keep the listings current. We market the region as one unified marketplace, and that's a competitive advantage that you can't manufacture. And it's exactly why this section of the website works. So number 6, collaboration is a word we're using a lot today, and it's actually at the heart of number 6 on our countdown. Forming partnerships, supporting transformative projects. Mary, tell us about some of the key partnerships the Freightway has forged.
Yeah, so the St. Louis region, we play a critical role in the nation's supply chain. Um, where we play an important part as far as being a logistics hub and connected to international markets. We also recognize that we're part of this national and global supply chain, and that means we have to partner with other regions. And when we partner with the other regions, it's really focused on those transportation corridors, and whether it's the Class 1 railroads, or 4 interstates, or 2 international airports, or the inland waterway system. So examples of those partnerships include a partnership with Kansas City to support the I-70 improvement project that's taking place across the state of Missouri. We've also partnered with the Port of Savannah to enhance our rail connectivity and support shippers. The Port of Savannah actually identified our region as a key import and export market. We've also entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Port of New Orleans, and that was in conjunction with all of our ports here in the St. Louis region, including the Americas Central Port, the St. Louis Port Authority, the Jefferson County Port Authority, and the Kaskaskia Regional Port District. And that served two purposes. The first one was it was really to focus on how we can strengthen that connection between the Midwest and Gulf Coast ports. The second part was we are continuing to partner with ports in southern Louisiana to launch a container on vessel initiative. And this is a planned development. The Port of Herculaneum in Jefferson County, Missouri has been identified as that designated hub for this proposed service, and vessels that would be designed and fabricated specifically to carry containerized cargo on the vessel along the inland waterway system would literally create an all-water north-south trade lane that would connect the Midwest to the lower Mississippi River and to global markets.
Well, Mary, you know I love talking about ports. So let's stay on that subject, my favorite subject. And let's talk just a little bit about number 5 on our countdown list, which is how the St. Louis region is known now as the most efficient inland port in the nation.
Yeah, so the St. Louis region's port system is responsible for 70 of the 855 miles of the Mississippi River. And we're focusing on a section from Minneapolis, Minnesota to the Ohio River near Cairo, Illinois. And based on numbers, based on total tonnage from the Army Corps of Engineers, these 70 miles carry about 25% of the river's total freight. And so the St. Louis region's barge industry is moving about 369,000 tons per mile, while the average tons per mile for the 8 other inland ports, they're moving about 92,000. And so all of this activity is being supported by 200 plus barge terminals that are operating within that 70 miles. And when we look at that status, it's really a KPI or a metric. It's an indicator about the competitiveness of the barge industry in our region. And it also is an indicator of the strength when you have both rail and trucking integrated in that freight network. So Dennis, can you share some comments about operating within the most efficient port?
I tell you what, Mary, it's just brilliant what the St. Louis Regional Freightway has come up with the efficiency metric. We saw for years and years that the inland port systems, they were just expanding and making their areas larger and larger. What you've come up with here on this most efficient metric is truly genius, because we now are able to tell the entire country, the entire world really, about how efficient we are here in the St. Louis metropolitan region with our river systems, and kind of pushing back, if you will, by not expanding necessarily and not taking on just trying to get more tonnage. It's let's take advantage of the tonnage that we already have, divide it by the number of river miles, and come up with that metric. And we use this on a daily basis in order for our marketing to help attract companies and barge users to the region. Shifting gears a little bit, Mary, let's go on to number 4 on our countdown list and talk a little bit about the creation of FreightWeekSTL to advance the St. Louis region as a global freight hub. As you know, today's conversation is taking place as part of FreightWeekSTL 2026. But for those who may be joining us just for this session, maybe, Mary, you can talk a little bit and give us some insight about what FreightWeekSTL is all about.
Yeah, so we launched our first Freight Week STL in 2018. At that point, we held it in conjunction with the Inland Marine Expo in downtown St. Louis. And during that period of time, they had over 2,000 freight and transportation experts, all convening in the downtown area. Fast forward to today, the format is more of a hybrid format that we host typically in May or June. It's a combination of in-person and virtual events, and it really just spotlights innovation and trends. It provides opportunities for freight and logistics experts to network and collaborate. This year's Freight Week STL, we've got a behind-the-scenes access to autonomous rail car technology that's being developed right here in St. Louis, right off Interstate 70. And then each year we have our traditional Ag Coast of America riverboat cruise, and it gives an opportunity for our region to see firsthand freight and global commerce. We typically have anywhere from 30 to 40 educators join us, and then industry leaders representing each of the modes of transportation, to talk about job opportunities, with hopes that now they'll be able to go out and promote the job opportunities in transportation and manufacturing. And then a lot of the discussions this year are focusing on workforce development, infrastructure investment, supply chain resiliency. We will also be releasing the Freightway's priority project list and our annual industrial real estate market report that provides insight on industrial development trends in the bi-state St. Louis region. And then each year, including this year so far, we've had a solid attendance. We've had widespread media coverage that's been an indication of the relevance of the topics and the national influence of the speakers who are participating this year. And so, from my opinion, I think this year's been one of the best Freight Week STLs we've had.
Okay, Mary, we're heading into the home stretch now as we've reached the number 3 in our countdown, launching the St. Louis Regional Aerospace and Aviation Task Force. Mary, tell us about this important initiative.
Yeah, so in 2022, we hosted our first Take Flight Forum that included the directors of the region's 5 busiest airports. And when we were getting ready for that event, we gathered data that really focused on the strength of the aerospace and aviation sector. And we recognized 2 things. Number one, we recognized we had a very robust ecosystem. And we also recognized that these 2 industries were supporting over $5 billion in new investment over the next 10 years, creating over 1,000 jobs. So we launched the St. Louis Regional Aerospace and Aviation Task Force in August of 2024. Representatives that are included with that task force include our 5 busiest airports and our other airports, aerospace companies operating here, educational institutions, workforce development groups. And really the primary purpose of this task force is to help build that workforce pipeline to support not only the existing companies, new companies, and then anticipated growth. So some of the companies that are experiencing that growth include Boeing, Gulfstream, Westar Aviation, as well as some of the smaller companies like Avmat and SIOR Industries. And so the first objective of the task force was try and get all this great information and put it in one location. So we launched the aerostl.org, and you can find this information. And then the second task we had was to develop career roadmaps for high school students so that they can learn more about these job opportunities and navigate their way to finding the jobs in aerospace and aviation. So these roadmaps, we have a series of roadmaps for aerospace and aviation. And depending if you are a high school student who has a GED or would like to join the workforce immediately after high school, we have a roadmap for you. Same thing if you have a 2-year degree or interest in a 4-year degree. And each of these roadmaps provide a list of the jobs, the job responsibilities, the skill sets, and the earning potential. So really, these documents are going to help students figure out how can they get to the front door of Boeing, Westar, and Gulfstream. Our theme for all of this is high school to high pay. Those jobs, if you're walking right out of high school, can start around $50,000. And after a couple years, that number is going to start approaching $100,000. So we're going to ask everybody visit aerostl.org for all the information on our roadmaps, along with all the other information that we have that is supporting this industry and obviously attracting more of aerospace and aviation to our region.
And Mary, from the industrial brokerage side, it's been remarkable to watch. We weren't a region trying to prop up a struggling industry. We were sitting on roughly $5 billion in new investment, creating hundreds of new jobs. And the question wasn't whether the industry would grow, it was whether we'd have the workforce to catch it. And I think that's what collaboration looked like. The Freightway didn't build the ecosystem, as you said, but it brought every stakeholder to the same table, gave them a platform, and then turned a regional asset into a regional advantage. Our industry sees that kind of coordinated momentum, and it's a clear signal. St. Louis is open for business. The Freightway's work focused on aerospace and aviation has been a key driver of media coverage in recent years, but it's just one of the topics helping to attract the media's attention. Your accomplishments on this front are the focus of number 2 on our countdown. Tell us how the Freightway has been able to generate millions of dollars in cumulative earned media coverage over the past 10 years, and how that coverage is positively positioning the region on the local, national, and global stage.
Yeah, so when the Freightway was first launched, there was little awareness of what the strengths of the region's freight network was. There was little awareness with the fact that we are a global logistics hub. So nobody was telling that story in entirety for the bi-state region and our 8 counties. And so we took on that challenge. And so to do that, we're basically doing storytelling. So examples of some of the press releases we've sent out, a lot of times it's focusing on some of the unique things that's going on in the site selection area, what our advantages are. And then we've sent individual press releases out on the most efficient inland port, the Ag Coast of America. We identified the top targeted manufacturing industries in our region, and we sent press releases out on that. We've spotlighted our rail served sites. Each year we send out our industrial real estate market report, and we also talk about our priority projects that we update each year. And then depending on what's going on regionally or nationally or globally, we'll send out commentaries that have been picked up by our local media and national media. And then obviously we've got a lot of our creative initiatives like FreightWeekSTL, the Aerospace and Aviation Task Force, and our Take Flight forums. And then from a media exposure, it's kind of twofold. So we've got the local and regional outlets that we're really excited about because, again, that's helping educate our region about our significance as a global logistics hub. It's also getting the word out about the availability of jobs in this space. And then the national trade publications, such as the Site Selection Magazine, Area Development, American Journal of Transportation, and others, they've all done a fantastic job as far as picking up our information and helping us build that awareness. So if you look at over the last 10 years, it really all adds up. So we've had over 2,000 placements, over 50 million impressions, and a publicity value topping $10.5 million over the last 10 years. And these numbers are really indicators of our national and global relevance. This visibility and consistent media attention is really helping us build awareness of that target market. And that target market really focuses on shippers, carriers, site selectors, and our industry partners.
And Mary, speaking from the industrial real estate side, I can tell you that media coverage matters. The Freightway has dramatically improved the region's digital footprint and brand awareness. And as you said, 10 years ago, companies outside our region weren't talking about the St. Louis MSA as a logistics hub, but today they are. And it's showing up in real deal flow. So I've personally seen an uptick in inquiries from companies outside our region at site selectors, developers, end users who found us through the coverage that the Freightway has driven. And that's, it's not vanity metrics, it's business coming to our doorstep.
Absolutely, Steve. There's no doubt about it. And, hats off to the St. Louis Regional Freightway for the job you all have done in pushing out and marketing what we all knew for a long time. We're a great place to do business. The freight flow through here is fantastic. And we just needed more media exposure to that. And you've done a phenomenal job in going out and getting that exposure through all the articles, through everything that you've done. And hats off also to those trade publications who are picking that up. The numbers that you gave us, Mary, were just super impressive. And there's no question that the Freightway's marketing and communications efforts have put the St. Louis region on the map as a global logistics hub. And that brings us to our number 1 on today's countdown list, and that is demonstrating that power of collaboration. That collaboration is a common theme across so many of the articles secured, and the Freightway is a shining example of just what can be accomplished when the right people are gathered in support of a shared vision. Can you talk about that a bit?
Oh, Dennis, I couldn't agree with you more than that. So our region's success in freight and logistics is built on partnerships and collaboration. The Freightway is where all those connections come together. So this really is a model for public-private partnerships. It's also why the Ag Coast of America and the most efficient inland port in the country has an impact that goes far beyond our geography. So at the end of the day, it's pretty simple. These partnerships help guide which transportation investments have the most impact on our daily lives. And in many ways, the St. Louis region, we really are a launch pad to the world. So it's not about the Mississippi River. It's not about rail, ports, highways, or airports that it's making it work. It's the collaboration that ties everything together. So my job is really to bring the right people together. And when we do that, we're doing some really big things. And so we're not just moving freight, we're shaping how the global supply chain operates. Okay, you guys, I'd especially like to thank each of you again for joining me today and taking part in this reflection on the Freightway's first 10 years. Partnerships like yours are really at the heart of our success, and I'd also like to thank our past and current stakeholders who have supported the Freightway over the past decade. And as we look ahead, I look forward to your continued collaboration and engagement as the Freightway starts to strengthen the connection between public and private sectors and continue advancing the region's strongest logistics and site selection advantages. Special thanks to our sponsors. Their support makes it possible for us to continue to deliver the great content that is a hallmark of this annual conference. Presenting sponsors include Ameren, the Illinois Railroad Association, and GFT Infrastructure. Supporting sponsors include HNTB, Steadfast City, and the Hauser Group.